everybody, this week I'm going to talk to you about my experience learning Korean with Memrise. Like I did with Duolingo, I'm going to be talking about some pros and some cons and my experience. Once again, let's start with the cons. I like to end on a good note. In Memrise, you have to pay to get all of the benefits. That's the reviewing difficult words, that's the learning with the locals, that's the listening skill. All of those things you have to pay for, and I honestly think it's a little bit worth it. So in the end, it's not entirely free. It could be free, but to get the full benefit of using the program, I don't think it's free, which is unfortunate. The grammar in the beginning of their program is odd. It uses both 반말 and 존댓말, but it doesn't explain the difference or when you would use those two different grammar points, and that's kind of essential when learning Korean. The program itself can get a little repetitive, which is good for retention and memory, but bad for attentiveness. You could get bored. There are some acted out scenes that are very cringy, which, it depends on what kind of level of cringe you can handle. I couldn't handle it. And finally, there's a bug with the audio of self-made flashcards. So, I don't know what to say about that one. That was a bug. That was a weird, app thing and not to do with the way the app teaches Korean. It's a bug that I noticed that bothers me. Now, the things I like about Memrise. It builds on previously learned terms. So you might learn a vocabulary word, and then the next time you go around, that vocabulary word is put into a sentence. Maybe a short sentence, 2 or 3 words. Maybe a longer sentence. And then when you learn that sentence, the vocabulary, that whole thing gets put into something longer, and you get an answer for whatever that conversation point is, so that you can have both sides of the conversation, both being able to speak it and being able to understand it, which I think is really cool. The program teaches actual sentences, like full-length sentences, which is nice, instead of just words and you have to figure out how to put them together. Korean is different in that the word order is different from English, different from a lot of Romanized languages actually, where it's subject, object, verb instead of subject, verb, object. So learning where to put the words in a sentence can be confusing, but because Memrise teaches you sentences and shows you the literal definitions of those sentences, you can kind of see what the word order is as you go along. It has real people speaking, both the vocabulary words and the little skits and sentences. And that I think is really necessary. It's something that Duolingo did not have. I think because they use real people speaking, there's not a reliance on romanization. For the purposes of multiple choice, occasionally there is a romanization reference, but it's not as heavily relied on as in other apps. The app itself promotes long-term memory development with the review and remind features. Both the desktop and the mobile versions of the app work well, and the mobile app works well on both Apple and Samsung devices. The only thing I could say is on a desktop version, you can't go over the grammar points. You need to have a mobile device to do that, which is a little bit odd, but it's still possible to learn. Lessons only take a few minutes. You can decide what level of intensity you want, whether you want to only do 5 minutes a day, up to 15 minutes a day. There's no limit if you want to go over 15 minutes a day, but you can change the base goal to where you want it to be, and it's really obvious and easy to change it. Technically, you can learn for free. There's just a lot of ads, and you don't get all of the use of the app. It is possible to learn for free, but like I said before in the cons, I honestly think those extra things are a little bit worth it. But you can decide for yourself. The app isn't completely useless if you don't spend money. It's actually really good. So there's that to consider. And then my favorite part, you can create your own flashcard deck, and it'll treat it just like it treats its regular program for learning the language. I use this for all of the other outside language sources. I put the vocabulary into Memrise, and I use their long-term memory remind review feature in order to go through all of the vocabulary words and make sure that I remember them and that I'm constantly reminded of them. Now, as I was going through this app, I was honestly surprised at the number of skits that are there in the app, but I do like each of the features. There's a whole bunch of different ways of learning. You have the vocabulary where it just shows you the word and you do the answer, but you also listen to the word at the same time, which I think is helpful. There's also real people speaking the word or the sentence in a sort of context. There are skits at the end where you have to listen for the word that you know. So you don't know what's being said, but you can kind of guess based on what you learned in that lesson. Every few lessons or so, there's a grammar point, like how to put words together, how to use verb endings, which I think is really useful. And my favorite part is the fact that real people are talking. I think it helps with the comprehension of the language. Overall, I really like Memrise, and I do think you could learn Korean with Memrise. I got pretty far in only 30 days. I do think that it is more of a supplement than an actual language learning app. The same kind of goes with Duolingo. I don't think I found an app that works as a language learning app, and it's more of a language learning supplement app. There's not enough combination of grammar and vocabulary in any of these apps for me to consider it true language learning. And combining vocabulary and grammar is kind of what I think is essential. So I think this one is worth it. Of the two that I've tried so far, this one is definitely my favorite. If you've used Memrise or Duolingo or any other language learning app, let me know what you thought of it down below. If you think I should try out an app, also let me know. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!